Okay, good afternoon, guys, and welcome to yet another episode of the Spacia Tech, where we interview startup founders, businesses, and organizations in the tech space and understand what exactly is happening out here in the tech space. So today we have a very interesting guest, somebody in the agri-tech business or in the agri-tech world, and we're going to have a really nice go at what it is like doing business in that space. I have my co-founder here today, Fred. You can say hi, and then we will uh, end the suspense and introduce our CEO today for Stable Foods. He will tell us more about who he is and what Stable Foods is and how they got to where they are today. So welcome, Fred.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mal, for that introduction. So, my name is Fred, the usual co-host to Mal Mayenga, and today we want to chat with someone that I first saw their story on Techabal. So, Techabal featured the story of Stable Foods, and I bumped on the article, and I was really excited to see a Kenyan startup featuring there because the majority of startups that are covered in Techabal are Nigerian naturally. But when I saw Stable Foods there and got to read about the business model, my question was, why haven't I heard about this before? And I realized that there's a gap in how we tell our stories, not only in Kenya, but in Africa as a whole. So we talk a lot about, the negatives, the corruption, the disease, the load shedding, drought, hunger. But good things are also happening in Africa too, and particularly in the space of commerce. And our people don't get to hear about these stories. So Tekabal is doing a great job, and for us at Spacia Tech, which literally, for the sake of Andrew, this translates to Space for Tech. We have decided to feature such conversations, to have such conversations with tech movers and shakers, and to share the rich stories, success stories with our audience, first as an inspiration and then as information. So thank you, Andrew, for being here today and for making the time out of your busy schedule as a CEO and a co-founder. So I think we can just begin by getting to know you as a person, what you have done throughout your career, and where you are today founding Stable Foods. Andrew?
Sure. Thanks so much. Marilyn, it's really nice to speak with you again. And Fred, thank you so much for that really kind introduction. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on Spacia Tech. And yeah, that Tech Cabal article was very nice. So it's nice to know that sometimes media works in your favor. It connects you with some really good people.
Yes.
So my name is Andrew. I'm from the United States, and I have been living in East Africa for almost exactly 5 years. But before that, actually, sort of the beginning of my career, I spent in Central and South America. So I knew at, I guess you could say, a pretty young age that I was interested in seeing other parts of the world for personal reasons as well as professional. And so I took a few very exciting jobs in Central and South America in my early to mid 20s, which was great. And then ultimately went to business school in my late 20s. I went to business school in the United States, which is relevant because, as most people that do anything associated with education in the United States, I left with a lot of student loans. So I ended up. Yeah, it's just part of the deal. It's part of the contract. I won't get into the number, but let's say this is a true fact. I just finished off paying my student loans from my master's degree 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
So that was
Yeah.
it was like 8.5 years. Anyway, so yeah, obviously I was a little bit restricted to what kind of job I could take after business school because I needed something that could really pay the bills and really pay the student loans. And I actually spent 3 really nice years at Ford Motor Company in one of their leadership development programs. So it's one of the largest automobile manufacturers in the world, 200,000 people, $150 billion in revenue, a truly corporate job. I remember the first time
I was quite impressed with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if you need to be impressed, but I remember the first time that I saw what is called a cube farm or a cubicle farm, and it's just a big rectangular building, and it's just all the letters of the alphabet from A to Z down the row, and then for numbers 1 through 10 across the row, sort of that 24 times 10 or 26 times 10, so either 240 or 260 cubes, and I was like, okay, this is where I live now. But anyways, in all seriousness, Ford treated me really well. I had a great time. Still really good friends with a lot of people there. But I knew I was looking for something a little bit more interesting, and I thought a little bit more differentiated, if I may say. It's probably one of my number one parameters in where I like to work. It's one of the reasons why I'm so pleased to be at Stable Foods right now. So anyways, after 3 years at Ford, I moved to, I found a job in Rwanda. I was a commercial director at a social enterprise there. Spent 2 good years there, and then 2.5 years as commercial and operations director at an FMCG company actually based on the Kenyan coast. East Africa's largest producer of manufactured coconut products, coconut oil, coconut cream, coconut milk, that kind of stuff. It's Ken Taste for all the Kenyan listeners out there. It's really good quality stuff, and you're buying local. But after 2.5 years, I was like, you know what? I'm looking for something a little bit bigger and a little bit more differentiated and a little bit more in tune with my desire to bring big positive change at scale to the world. And so I resigned, and then was ultimately, and took a little bit of time, was ultimately put in touch with the owners and the founders of a venture builder based in Kenya. It's called Pyramidia Ventures, and if you guys know venture builders, they sort of, it's smart people who have a little bit of money, just a little, and they put their heads together and they're like, look, there's a lot of problems that we could solve through business. Let's test a few things, let's pilot a few things, and let's see what is commercially viable, what has legs. And then once 1 or 2 of those ideas has legs, then let's go get some institutional investment. Institutional investors generally don't invest anything if you don't have at least a CEO, if not a full C-suite in place. And then that's where I came on board. They were looking for a CEO and a co-founder. I sent in a cover letter and a resume, and then 6 or 8 weeks later, whatever it was, I was the guy for the job. So that's how I ended up at Stable Foods. Any questions or comments so far?
Did you have an interest in agri-tech or, that space, or was it just
absolutely? Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, no, this was not random. In fact, like I said, I resigned from my previous job, and I spent some time. It was a couple months, and in fact, I had some really nice job offers from some really nice companies. But ultimately, I knew that I really kind of wanted to work in kind of really only 1 or 2 spaces. One was vehicle electrification is something that's really fascinating to me. General electrification, but given my background in vehicles and my love of motorcycles, that made a lot of sense. But then the other one was either food productions or food production systems. So making more with less and distributing more to more people that frankly just don't have a lot. And so Stable Foods fit squarely, very, very squarely, right in the middle of the bullseye for that second one. And so I was pretty well enamored from basically the first conversation with the owners of the venture builder.
Interesting.
Wow. What informs the name Stable Foods? It's kind of an interesting name, right, Mal?
Sure.
Yeah.
No, it's a great question, and there's a very straightforward answer for it. So Stable Foods exists to reduce food insecurity. Ultimately, we plan on taking over the continent. Right now, we just stay in Western Kenya because that's where our operations are. But everyone knows, right? Even if you're on the upper middle class side of things, you know that prices fluctuate because there's high and low seasons of production, and that just makes it really hard for sort of the average people to live, right? I mean, one day tomatoes cost 10 shillings, and 2 months later they cost 20 shillings, but your salary is probably the same. How are you supposed to work with that? And so quite literally, we want Stable Foods to be a company that brings stability to the price and the supply of just sort of regular everyday horticulture products for regular everyday Kenyans.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. And when I was checking your website, doing my research, I saw that the smallholder farmer is really the focus, like the focal point of your strategy. And perhaps my first question would be, why you bet on the smallholder farmer to transform the agriculture in Africa? Do you believe so much in the potential of the smallholder farmer vis-a-vis the large scale farming that I think sometimes the government is pushing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, Fred and Merlyn, I mean, we could talk for hours. I'll try to be concise. I mean, there's a couple things. One, there's 5 million plus smallholder farmers in Kenya. So even if you only work with a tiny fraction of them, let's say a tenth of that, and you're able to double their output, you are talking about a massive change. And so when you're fighting something like food insecurity, the only way that this works is if it is done at a massive scale. So starting with a base of 5 million, let's say even a 10th or a 20th of that, if you're able to get those people on board and bring change to them, then you will bring change to the community. So that's number one. And then number two, I think, look, I mean, I'm an outsider in every way, shape, or form, right? I'm not a citizen here. I've only lived here for 3 years. My Kiswahili is terrible, right? And so I think it's sort of ethically and philosophically important that what I work towards works within a relatively existing framework and structure of sort of community and society. And so when you're looking around here, and I've got this beautiful valley, I'm just at the edge of Lake Victoria. I mean, it's really quite stunning. It would be amazing to say, yeah, let's just consolidate this and just do like 2 100-acre farms. But that's not what the community wants, right? The community wants to retain their ownership, their possession, and their boundaries of their land. So I don't think it would be very appropriate of me to sort of work around that or sort of fight what the community wants, right? Because at the end of the day, although Stable Foods is a business and we are technically here to make money, we're here to make money in support of the community, if that makes sense. And then thirdly, I mean, I guess there's a lot of different ways that you can consolidate. And I got to be very frank, I have not done a lot of research about large scale commercial grade consolidation. So very, very probably, very possibly, the landowners are very well compensated. But at the same time, it's really nice to be able to see sort of on a one-on-one, pretty individual household based sense that you can see the individual value that you're bringing to them. And so then for those sort of 3 reasons and perhaps a few more, yeah, we do think that smallholder farmers are the way to go because it's just such an untapped resource and it already kind of is an existing structure.
Wow, yeah, absolutely. And another, just to follow up, there's the cost aspect of food, and in your website it states like it goes up to as much as 40%. What do you think contributes to that? Why food is so expensive in Africa, as much as 40%, 50%? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that is sort of part of the origin story. Just to say it simply, a big part of it is lack of really efficient production. Right. I mean, if you look at the numbers of what an average acre yield is in North America, Europe, and then Asia, we're talking, 2 to 5 to sometimes 8 times more than an average acre of production yield here in, or at least the lesser developed areas of that. So when you've got low yield, and then you multiply low yield by, like I said, 5 to 7 million smallholder farmers, that's just a really big missed opportunity, right? Increase the yield, multiply it by 5 million, and you've got a really big difference, right? But if you've got low yield, I mean, in fact, I was just talking to my production manager 2 days ago. He was doing some research with some local farmers here. He's been a farmer for 15 years, and he's Kenyan, 100% Kenyan. He's only ever known Kenya, ever farmed in Kenya. But he was still just amazed at the low yield of some of the farmers in the area around us. It's like, how do you even eat? And that really is an actual question, right? So that's a big part of it, just low yield. And then another part of it is post-harvest loss, post-production and post-harvest loss. So making sure that you get the products to market where they're appreciated, right? I mean, basically everything that we produce other than beans is a perishable product. So you got to get it to the market, within 12 to 24 hours and then sell it in another 24 to 48 after that. Otherwise, it just becomes waste and spoilage. And so, infrastructure challenges, of course, but then also market linkages and market dynamics are what prevent that from being a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's having to go to the ground and talk to these farmers and probably convince some of them that this is a good venture, that it's not an easy piece of work. So if you could just walk us through the process of how did you develop this product, from talking to the farmers, coming together with your background, what challenges have you faced while you were doing this, and where have you reached since you began this venture? How has this journey been?
Sure. Well, the first thing I got to say is a lot of the work was done before I got here. Like I said, that Stable Foods is a product of a venture builder. So there are some very smart, very hardworking people that put in, let's say, about a year, a little bit more worth of effort to test and design and to consider some things. So in some ways, I was handed a bit of a playbook, or I was handed at least a little bit of a guide. And then obviously since June, since I've come on board full time, it's been mine to run with, mine to modify and adapt as necessary. So to give a little bit more background on what Stable Foods does, or sort of the innovation of how we work with smallholder farmers, is going back to that major challenge of really just low yield, and then ultimately low market access. One of the major challenges of low yield is that farmers, especially in this area, but the data that I see says that below 5% of smallholder farmers in Kenya have access to irrigation services, is that when you don't use irrigation, you are beholden to obviously rainfall. And some years rainfall is great, but lots of years, especially increasingly less with climate change and global warming, some years rainfall isn't great. And so our primary innovation is that we've developed an ultra low cost irrigation system based on shared water access, sort of economies of scale, you could say, that allows us to bring irrigation to farmers that otherwise would never be able to afford it. And so that is sort of the linchpin of what we do here, because we say, look, before you only farmed once a year, and you farmed at the exact same period when everyone else farmed, so you're going to ultimately sell your products when the prices are at their absolute lowest. Why don't you, if you had an option to get drip irrigation systems, you'd be able to produce 12 months of the year, and you'd be able to sell in a counter-cyclical fashion, a counter-cyclical calendar, which in some cases adds between 50 and 80%, sometimes even 100% of the price of the product. So that is the foundation of the business, is that we have a variety of different models that allow smallholder farmers that otherwise would have never been able to afford irrigation to be able to afford irrigation. On that, we are definitely continuing to iterate every single day. I've got actually a consultant on loan, which is really great. He's just a really thoughtful thought partner. And he and I talk probably 4, sometimes 5 days a week about what we need to do to modify our product offering. And it's all the same things that right? You got to go talk to 50 farmers, and then go talk to another 100. And then sometimes you got to go back to talk to the first 50 because maybe you didn't fully understand their answers in the first place, right? So it's a lot of sitting, it's a lot of chatting, it's a lot of talking to other people in the area, what works, what doesn't work. And also it's a lot of asking, like, cool, so we think we've got this awesome product, and some people are really on board. We do actually have a lot of demand for this product. But then there's a couple of people who aren't. And those are the people that you can learn the most about. So what is holding those people back? What are their hesitations? What do they think is crummy about what we're offering? And then if you can dig into that, you can usually also unpack a lot of other people's hesitations that brings them from like a level 7 excited to like a level 8 or a level 9 excited. And that's when you can start moving the numbers pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking that there's a lot of players in this agricultural space right now. So there's the government, which is the biggest stakeholder here. There's the farmer. There's the middlemen are here. There's the policymakers. There's the NGOs. I mean, I'm thinking that harmonization. How do you harmonize this space so that in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, we are not in the same place that we started? I know I don't know whether you get my point.
No, I do. No, it's a great question. How do you think about scaling when there's so many different players to work with? Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted. What was the last thing you said?
Yeah, in terms of collaboration, in terms of working together, in terms of policy, just coming together to solve the problems that are facing Africa in terms of food security, as you mentioned at the start.
Well, I think I sort of tell myself this more or less every evening and more or less every morning, that we are trying to tackle an enormous problem, and so it's okay if we don't get everything done in the first 4 weeks, if you know what I mean. So I sometimes feel myself getting a little down. We haven't made the progress we wanted to. And then I remember, innovation takes time, community relations take time, et cetera, et cetera. And then there are, of course, other weeks when we're like, wow, we achieved way more than I thought we were going to. sort of moving in fits and starts. But then to answer your question really directly about collaboration, I guess my connection to my first comment is start small and sort of figure out what you need now. And then just always sort of have that vision of how to scale. Like, it's okay to some extent if everything isn't working perfectly right now, as long as that vision doesn't get a little bit too blurry. Like, obviously you're allowed to pivot, obviously you're allowed to change. Every startup does. In fact, the sooner the better, the faster the better. But overall, the way I'm thinking about collaboration right now is I know what my 2023 goals are, and my 2023 goals are, ambitious, but also I believe very achievable. And I know that if I can achieve 2023, that is going to give me a massive amount of talking points, a massive number of talking points and a massive amount of confidence, so that when my 2024 goals double or triple, I know that I have achieved 2023 with the skeleton crew. So with a little bit more support, a little bit more money, a lot more knowledge, a ton more experience, that 2024 shouldn't be so bad. So then again, taking it back to your specific questions, where do you know where to collaborate with? I'm really focusing on what's going to get me to the end of 2023. And so I'm not trying to boil the ocean right now. I mean, again, so I started in June of last year. So that was about, 7 or 8 months ago. When I started, we had 4 employees. I think I just hired my 14th and 15th yesterday. So we're still pretty small. So in terms of collaborations, maybe I don't talk to the national government just yet, but I'll certainly talk to the sub-county and county government. And then instead of talking to like the biggest NGOs in the world, let's talk to the ones that are already existing in my area, right? Or maybe even not the NGOs, but the community development organizations, the real small ones, the ones that know people intimately. And then that's the thing about building an empire, right? I mean, like, where did Uber start? Where did Amazon start? I mean, I guess those are sort of, maybe those aren't the best example because those are slightly, vilified examples of corporate malfeasance. But I mean, like, where did 1 Acre Fund start? You can't let the journey of 1,000 miles get you down, even if you're only on the second step. The second step still has to get you to the third. And so my collaboration strategy is like start local and then just let it develop. And then once scale starts to, go exponentially, you'll get an opportunity to connect with the bigger partners when you're ready for the bigger partners.
Yeah, I like that you are thinking of starting small. Definitely, Uber started somewhere with one vehicle, 2
At some
vehicles.
point, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and on that note, on the collaboration note, if you need any language assistance, I'm sure Fred, that is his home area. He knows the
Oh,
people.
very cool. Very cool.
I
Well,
come
I
from
mean,
I come from Kisumu.
Yeah.
okay, very cool. Well, if nothing else, Fred, you should just come check it out. I mean, so you obviously
Yeah.
know how beautiful it is. I don't need to
Yes.
explain you that. But
Yeah.
we always appreciate visitors, and obviously you coming from your deep knowledge of entrepreneurship. I'm sure there's some big drops of knowledge that you could throw at us.
And help you with conversion too.
Yeah.
He knows the language, yeah, so he could be a great asset in that space. So my next question is, what is the future of stable food in the agricultural and food production pipeline? Do you
Sure.
see stable food being a leader, positioning itself as a leader in this space?
Absolutely, yeah. So like I said before, our mission is very squarely to reduce food insecurity, or I should say, excuse me, reduce food insecurity through climate-friendly practices. But if we just focus on that first part, this company only makes sense to me, the rest of the owners, the founders, the board, etc. If we do it at scale. If we thought that we were only going to work with 100 farmers or even just 1,000 farmers, there's maybe better or easier or other ways that we could reduce food insecurity at that level. Maybe, commercial farming is the way to go, right? Maybe we should all just pool our money as investors, just buy a 2 or 10 or 5,000 acre plot and just farm it to the best of our ability. But like I said earlier, that doesn't really it doesn't distribute the value as much as we want it to, and also that kind of makes it difficult to be everywhere at once, because you're not going to find 20 different plots of 5,000 acres apiece. So from our side, I think our desire to be a leader in the food production space is pretty clear. we want to be the trusted partner for smallholder farmers, like I said, all over Western Kenya, then the region, where they know that they can come to us for inputs, for training, for market access, and like I said, innovatively, our access to water and therefore irrigation, so that they can enjoy in the doubling or tripling of income that comes from the doubling or tripling of yield and better access to markets. And then, of course, the community really is the ultimate benefactor, because all of a sudden they've got 2 or 3 times as much produce, and then traditional supply and demand model. If the demand stays approximately the same, supply goes up, prices go down, everyone's able to buy more. They're able to buy more for less, which means that they are healthier at important stages in their adolescence, of course, when development is so key, and they've got more money to spend on other things, whatever it is, a motorcycle, a cell phone, school fees, etc. Right? So yeah, we're small, we're young, but the aspirations are at this point huge. We want to be working with tens of thousands of partners within maybe by the end of our 5th year.
That is very impressive. And on the subject of future plans, is there anything that we should be looking out for as far as Stable Foods is concerned, maybe in the next 9 months or as the year ends? And I also saw you guys got some funding, 600K.
Yep, that's right.
So yeah, could you maybe shed more light on that? How did that come about? And what are some of the plans for all that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A big thumbs up, big positive shout out to ARAF, that's Acumen Resiliency Agriculture Fund, and then Mercy Corps Ventures, not only for just being willing, obviously, to take a risk on this venture financially, but also, frankly, just being really good partners. I won't get into all the details, but they have provided, guidance and friendliness and TA support and just good old-fashioned mentorship, both officially and unofficially. So they've been fantastic to work with, and I obviously hope that we will continue to have them as our investment partners from years to come. Yeah, so that money landed in October of last year. So before then, we were not quite in a holding phase, but that we were really just working with fumes. Like I said, I think until October, I think I only had about 5 employees. 14 isn't a lot more than 5, but, well, I guess it is. It's about triple. But we're finally able to start scaling. This allows us to purchase CapEx infrastructure. Obviously, we install irrigation products, that's solar pumps, solar systems, etc. So these things obviously do cost real money. So from our side, I won't get into too much of the details, but we are planning for about an 8 to 10x increase in acres under contract, and almost that much for acres under operation during this year. So for us, that's massive, right? I mean, having a startup go for 10x in its 2nd year, that's obviously not very hard if you're selling an app or if you're a tech platform. But this is full on, physical, logistical, infrastructure-based work. And it's not just physical infrastructure-based work. You actually have to have the community development piece before that. And that part is great. It's actually a lot of fun. I enjoy the barasas, etc. But you don't just offer somebody on a Tuesday and then they make their mind up on a Wednesday. It takes a little bit of time. These are big decisions to partner with a company. We haven't been around very long. Who is this weird Mzungu from the United States that hasn't had a haircut in 6 months, right? It's like, why is he 38 and he isn't married? Can we really trust a 38-year-old who isn't married? And, sometimes I say, I don't know if you can, given that criteria. But it just takes a little bit of time. And so for us, a 10x increase is really fantastic. And so if you don't live in Western Kenya, if you don't live in the 3 areas around here, you might not see our product. But having, I'll just sort of estimate 100 acres of operation, you are in an area like this that isn't known for its agricultural production, you might be one of the biggest producers in the sub-county. And then you actually start to have an opportunity to impact people's lives in greater supply and lower cost. We had a school recently, I won't say the name, but a very local school came to me unexpectedly. I didn't know they were coming. They'd never reached out. 2 days ago, it said, look, we can't find kale. We've got 3 more months in the school year before the rainy season harvest comes in, and we're already out of kale suppliers. Can you please help us? And we said, yeah, of course, we'll sell you what kale we have, and let's plant a little bit more kale so you've got some backups in the short term. But just little things like that. So, I mean, am I going to be IPOing for $14 billion at the end of this year? No, I don't think so. But in terms of exciting things that I'm really passionate about, they align directly with the mission and vision of the company, which is reducing food insecurity. And we already see that we're doing that in this little pocket of the country. And then in 2024, so going a little bit beyond 9 months, that will be the time that we will start looking for other sites. So right now we're nestled away in this beautiful little corner on the edge of Lake Victoria, but maybe we want to go a lot closer to Kisumu because it's a much bigger market, or maybe we'll want to consider a different lake or a different body of water, find some rivers, some boreholes, etc. So a lot of opportunities for expansion in the next, let's call it, 12 to 24 months.
Yeah. Just listening to you explain this whole thing that you're doing in the western part of Kenya is so exciting. I'm even thinking that where maybe I could
get into agriculture.
Yes, or even join Stable Foods as a volunteer or something.
Yeah,
I'm sure we can find you. You seem like a man of many talents.
Yeah.
I always say, I mean, even if we're not hiring, we're always looking for talent. So you get that.
Yeah. So I just want to ask, and maybe you have touched on this a little bit, but just for the sake of the understanding of our audience. So there's the farmer, which is who is the main focal point. So how do you approach the farmer? For example, I think one of your most innovative products that I've never heard about this anywhere is irrigation as a service. Can you just maybe expound on what this is about? How you approach farmers with this, what you tell them. Is it paid? Do they pay for it? And how do they pay for it just that whole environment of a kind of one product or two products that you offer to farmers that you have seen the impacts like blow up since you started?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So like I said, we do have a few different products that we're happy to let our farmers engage with us, right? Just like anything else, you don't go to the store and you only see, one type of potato chips. You see 15 or really 100. Actually, Kenya is impressively awash with delicious potato chips. And that's because not everyone has the same needs or has the same taste or the same ability to pay, etc. And so we bring the same mentality. And then in terms of actually how we address our farmers, it's pretty straightforward. All of my community relations staff is local, hyper local. No one lives more than I think 5 kilometers away from our current production sites. And so whether they know the chief or the sub chief, or they know of the chief or the sub chief, they'll make connections to either the chief or the sub chief in a certain area, and then the village elders, etc. We'll explain what Stable Foods is all about, and then we'll book a time in one of the barasas, one of the large group meetings. Usually for us, it's every Monday at 10 o'clock. And then we explain what we're about. And usually most people are quite excited, but also people have a lot of questions. So then we go from the barasas, then we usually do one-on-one sensitization. So my community relation team walks more or less door to door in a given sort of geographical area, and then just does sort of a secondary or further explanation of the product. And then usually the farmers say, okay, let me talk to my family, etc. And then they decide which of our products or services are best for them. And that's kind of how we want it to work, right? A little bit more detail in the irrigation as a subscription. So basically what we've identified is that, like I said, you look at this beautiful valley and the land all around it. Some of the land isn't really farmed at all. Like some of the land that you see around here has not been touched from a farming perspective in 2 or 3 or 5 years. And so from my side, I say, wow, that's an opportunity. That's some land, that's some beautiful green earth that we could be making a lot of vegetables out of, and also the farmer could be benefiting from. And so one of the products that we have is we call it lease and operate. And so quite simply, we lease the land and then we operate the farming ourselves. So if someone's got some land and they are not doing anything with it, I say, hey, do you want to make a little bit of money? You don't have to do a thing. We will take care of everything. And in fact, we will even improve your land by putting a fence on it, planting trees. The trees are yours. They're not the company's, etc., that you can benefit from as they grow up. And then in the meantime, we get land that we can farm on. Also, importantly, we create jobs, right? Farming has to be done by people. I guess that, if you're in the Netherlands, it's all mechanized and super fancy, like, 2095, like we're living on Mars or something, but Stable Foods isn't quite there yet. We've got 2 small hand tractors and a couple djembes and pangas, and the rest is done by laborers. And so I'll be very honest, these people are not going to be buying Mercedes-Benz anytime soon, but this is decent money. We pay on time every week, and they can bring that money cash back to their families in an area that otherwise don't have too many job opportunities. So that's the one side, lease and operate. That's generally better for a farmer that isn't really interested in being a farmer. Maybe they already have a part-time job. Maybe they live half the year in Kisumu, or maybe they're just older, or maybe they just don't want to be a farmer. For any of those reasons, we're happy to bring value to the community through jobs and the payments we make to you, the landowner, and then also massively through the produce that we produce. So that's one. And then, Fred, specifically to your question about irrigation as a subscription, there's sort of the flip side. There's a lot of people here that do want to be farmers, and they recognize that they can make a little bit of money in this. But one of the major challenges, or really 2, that we've identified through our market surveys, is they're like, well, the rains are terrible, and also we don't know where to sell this stuff. So even if we did have, a better crop, a bigger crop, it would just spoil because we just don't have access to the markets the way that we'd like to. And that's when Stable Foods comes in. Everyone we're willing to work with, or even non-land partners, can be one of our market access partners. But then most importantly, for the irrigation as a subscription, the way that it works is, like I said before, we take an economies of scale based approach to creating an ultra low cost network of irrigated plots. So just this simple example. Let's say you have 10 acres, 10 different farmers. You could drill 10 different boreholes and have 10 different pumps and have 10 different tanks. That would be ridiculously expensive. Or maybe you have one water access point, one tank, one set of solar panels, and then one relatively low-cost distribution network. Drip irrigation does not cost a lot. You might be able to lower your costs per acre, per irrigated acre, by as much as 80%. And then once you have that, then you are able to package it in such a way that you don't need to ask for upfront cost. You don't need to ask for them to pay for it. And then the monthly subscription can be relatively affordable. And so that's what irrigation as a subscription is. We go to farmers who many of them don't own motorcycles. Bicycles really at most, struggling to pay school fees. These are not generally farmers that have 100,000 shillings or 150,000 or 200,000 shillings to pay for the infrastructure associated with installing it on their own land. We say, hey, we'll take care of all the hard part. We'll find the water access point, either lake shore extraction or irrigation from a borehole. And we say, we'll do that. We'll spend the money up front. And then we will install the drip lines on your property, and we'll provide the water. So that also means the power, the electricity. We're solar, by the way. We don't have any diesel pumps, obviously. And then we will irrigate your land. And then you just need to be a good farmer, which is made a lot easier when you have training programs, tested inputs that we sell them, obviously 12 months a year of consistent supply of drip water, and then ultimately that market access offtake program at the end. So one of the reasons why I like it so much is because basically any farmer we talk to should fall more or less into one of those 2 categories. Either you don't want to work the land, you haven't been working the land, so let's take the easy way out. We'll do the lease and operate model. Or irrigation as a subscription is better for the farmers who know there's value in farming. They just don't have the water access, the market access, and the input access to allow them to succeed and thrive.
Fred.
Thank you. So, and there's something that you mentioned that when you go into the villages and people look at you weirdly because you're a Muzungu
I'm a
with the
Mizungu that's missing a
yeah
haircut, and no
yeah
one's
you haven't
like,
had an
yeah.
haircut
It's
in
just
six
like, but
months
they're
and you're
like,
single.
what do you think you're doing on this world? You don't have
Yeah,
children.
yeah.
And I
Have,
just
have
say,
you
look,
have you
not
yeah.
children aren't for everybody. I
You're
gotta be
borrowing
honest.
land from other people.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. Don't you have your own land? No, I
exactly.
Yeah.
don't. I grew up in
Mhm.
America. We don't have
Yeah.
land.
Yeah. Do you encounter resistance? Because as much as you have this noble idea and you are all out to help people, there I imagine that there's some pockets of resistance just because human beings are going to be human beings at the end. And
Exactly.
yeah, and how do you go about circumventing some of these challenges or even smothering them so that you have the maximum impact that you want to have
Sure.
at the end of the day.
No, that's a great question, and another one that you could probably write a book about. I wouldn't say that we faced resistance, but we have definitely faced some skepticism.
Mhm.
Yes, yes.
And a lot of people saying like, "Hey, look, man, like I don't quite know who you are, or I don't quite
Yeah.
know who Stable Foods is, but like I've seen this kind of thing before. You're some charity, you come in, you do a project, you take everyone's name down, like you write that 100 people got trained, and then like we might not ever see you again." And so and that's fair, right? That's their lived
Yeah.
experience, right? That's super real. And in fact, you even see it on the CVs of some of the people around here that I'm interviewing. They'll do 10 years of like pretty real work, but just it's like a 6 month or a 9 month project for 15 times over 20 years. And then
Mhm.
sometimes you ask, what was the impact? And then, sometimes
Nothing.
it's light, I guess. Yeah. You said it. I didn't say it. I'll just say light. But so anyway, so a big part of it that I think I sort of stumbled on accidentally is like, it's important for me to be here. So I'm calling you from the farm. I mean, I'm calling you 400 kilometers from Nairobi. It's an 11-hour bus ride. I love being here, obviously, because I do love my work. And I love and adore my colleagues as well. But like, I miss my pets, I miss my friends, I miss my partner, I miss my
Right.
lovely apartment in Nairobi, and I'm here about 2/3 of the time
Mhm.
these days. And I take the overnight bus. So overnight bus on Monday, I usually get there, or Sunday night, I get there Monday morning. I work a 4-day week, and then I overnight bus, and then I go straight to the office back on Friday. So it's a full schedule, but I think it's really important that I'm here and then I'm walking around and just sort of talking to people and reassuring people. It does sort of make the community a little bit more comfortable with me because they
Yeah.
think that, oh, this guy is putting in the work, and so
Yes.
maybe he's a little bit more trustworthy.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one. And then the other one is, you know, I speak of this very frequently. You guys work in the tech space. I think of it a lot, the diffusion of innovation curve, which is the theory of about how like a new technology or a new process gets adopted by a population. And you know how it works. You start with your innovators, but we're past that. So we're the early adopters. There's always going to be 5 to 10% of a population that wants to try something new, even if it's a bit risky. So you start with them and you make sure that they basically have a good experience. Because once the early adopters have a good experience, then you can cross the chasm, as they say, to the early majority. Because and let's remember, right? I mean, just like all of us get our reviews from Google and Yelp and Facebook because you just want to hear what 300 people previously said about the mojitos at Havana Bar. You
Yeah.
you just want to hear it from somebody else. And so when you start with sort of a core group of people who've had a good experience, then they tell their friend, they tell their uncle, et cetera, et cetera. There was this one time, this was about a month ago, that one of our current land partners, who's a good friend of mine, and I think he's pretty happy with what we've done with him. He actually just straight up told me, "Hey, I heard you were at this meeting at this other community the other day. I told them that everything was going to go well, so I think they're going to sign up." And like, it's just one guy. I'm not saying he did all the work for us, but like having that guy call ahead and say, "Yeah, this weird unmarried 38-year-old with the bad haircut is actually a decent guy." Like that goes a long way, right?
Yeah.
But it started with him feeling trusted, feeling respected, and having a pretty good experience so far.
Right. So it helps to have a good name in the area. You get to do more work in advance that way.
You will do nothing without a good name.
Yeah.
People won't take your call. They'll be super polite. Everyone is so polite. They'll say, "Oh yeah, I'm just thinking about it. Oh yeah, I just need a little bit longer time to think," and then it'll
That's
be
a
2045 before you hear back from that
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
that's a common Kenyan thing, so don't worry about it.
I'm
Yeah.
not offended, but you just my thing is always like, yeah, but just tell me why you don't, because the no's are where you learn, like I said before. But like I said, once you get that good name, things just move a lot easier. I mean, I mean, we've all learned this before. I'm not telling anybody anything new.
Yeah. So yeah, I have a maybe one of the final follow-up questions. You keep mentioning about, this Mzungu man with a bad haircut, unmarried, asking people if we could use their land. Yeah, that's one of the perks of the job, yeah. But I'm sure you're enjoying the views and the fish. Most, I hope so. So, what is a rewarding aspect of being the CEO at Stable Foods? What keeps you going? What do you sleep at night and you're proud that you finally, you got into this venture and you're able to do, apart from, obviously paying your student loans, which is a good thing. But what is one thing that you are proud of so far with where Stable Foods is at? And as a follow up to that, what would you advise somebody, an entrepreneur who wants to get into the space, the agri-tech space, with what you've done, what you're envisioning to do? Is it something you'd advise somebody to get into? And if yes, what are some of the things they should look out for while in the space?
Yeah, those are great questions. Thank you. So the first one is, what are the things I'm proud of? I'm, you know, I wish I had, the most eloquent, unique thing to say, but I'm really proud of how hard the team is working. And I'm really proud of how hard the team sort of like recognizes what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Pretty much all the people on my team like really care about what they're doing. Like they whatever their job is, like they really want to be able to do that job well, not only for themselves. I have a very young team. The majority of my staff is below 28, really, so they also recognize this is a good opportunity for them professionally, 2, 3, 4, 5 years at a growing company they can grow. But a lot of it is just like, look, these are like local people from the local area. They know that like living can get hard. They know that food is scarce 5 months of the year and that jobs are scarce 12 months of the year, right? And so then if we can grow this company, that we are going to have an impact not only on our own individual lives, but on the community that they grew up in.
Yeah.
And so that's really beautiful. And I will say very personally, I did not grow up poor. I want to make it very clear. I did not grow up poor, but
Very
nonetheless,
noble.
there were two
Yes.
moments in my life,
Mhm.
two sort of brief moments in my life where I did go to bed hungry for a few weeks or a few months at a time. And that is a thing that you just never forget. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to work, like I said, in food systems and food systems development, because it just robs a person of their ability to be a full person, right? When you're
Yeah.
starving, and I don't mean that in the literal level, not unlike the you need to go to a hospital level, but if you're deeply hungry, you are not going to be your best. And if you're not going to be your best, then everything in life is going to be hard. Like
Yeah.
relationships are going to be hard, going to school is going to be hard, getting a job, having a job,
Mm,
succeeding is going
mm,
to be hard. So I'm
Yeah.
not
mm,
saying that food is the only thing that matters, but food
It's
is a
pretty
pretty
essential.
darn fundamental element of a
Yes.
person's ability to succeed in life. And
Mm.
so if you've got food insecurity, like it's not, the conclusion is not foregone, but you already know that you're working against a stacked deck. And so
Yeah.
that is what I go to bed thinking about and wake up thinking about. And if you've ever sat next to me at a meal, you will see that I will say a little prayer of thanks before every meal. And people say, "Are you religious?" And I say, "Not particularly, but I think it's always appropriate to say thank you for food because
Yeah.
it is the foundation of everything that we were able to do." And I guess same goes for all the people who work for clean water in the world.
Yeah.
So that's what I care about, and that is what keeps me going, and that's never going to go away, which is why I'm never going away. And then in terms of advice, I admit I do not have a ready answer for this. So I'm going to think about it a little bit. I think, look, I think if you're looking for impact, like
Mhm.
there are a lot of great spaces to work in. waste management, like I said, anything associated with reduction of carbon emissions, human rights, things that have nothing to do with the food in the body, but just like making sure quite literally that like people have their rights respected, especially minorities, underrepresented people, right? Because just in the same way, even if you got all the food in the world, but no one lets you go to school, or your government doesn't allow you to own land or whatever it happens to be, you're going to say, it doesn't matter how much chicken I have on my plate. There's things I want to do. So there's many, many, many things that you can do in the world that will provide impact. I don't mean to imply, I shouldn't imply that food is the only one of them. But food, I really love it because, look, I'm not a genius. If someone was like, hey, I've got an idea for blockchain 2.0, I'd be like, bro, I'm not your guy. It's just a little bit above my my IQ level, but but food systems, it's so integral, right? You got seed, you got water, you got soil, you got nutrients and minerals. You can build these things, you can improve upon these things. So I actually just really also love sort of the tactile nature of the job. And so if you're looking for that impact, if you want to be close to the earth, food and food systems is really one of the best places you can be. And certainly my production team, who all have farming degrees, or they're working on their farming degrees, they love it. I mean, this is what they wanted to do, and I see that in their work every day. And when they've got a great harvest and they've got a great yield, it's a really special feeling. In terms of specific advice, I mean, obviously this is pretty straightforward, 101 type stuff. Try to identify an underserved need. So that obviously means like try to identify like a problem in the loops, in the systems, in the gaps, etc. Obviously, having a background in the sciences is useful. Engineering obviously useful, because sooner or later you are going to come up with sort of a technology, right? Our technology is not necessarily like 35th century. We're combining things in ways that have never been done before. So our innovation is really in the effort, the sweat equity, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, wow. And just as the last follow-up, because I think we are approaching the hour, I just want to ask some of the rooms that you have been in, some of the personalities that you have interacted with in the space that have really impacted the way that you look at things and the way that you approach things as stable food, and even as a company. I know one of them, it came from Pyramid Ventures, but the startup scene in Kenya is wide. So I imagine that you have rubbed shoulders with some personalities, some organizations. So from that point, whether you can advise a startup founder that these are the people that you need to know in this place, these are the organizations that you need to know, just not deeply, but like some of the nooks and crannies that you have been in, that you can point someone in that direction.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's true. I have definitely benefited. Stable Foods has benefited from the help of others. If I may be totally frank, Fred, I don't know if I want to mention names, just because I haven't asked anybody in advance if there's specific call outs. And I don't, with all due respect to my my sort of unofficial advisory crew, I don't want them to have 1,000 emails in their inbox tomorrow. But I guess a few things I'll say is, I mean, you can start with LinkedIn. Honestly, I know it's silly, but honestly, I found that professional Kenyans on LinkedIn are very happy to talk. And also they're very happy to just point people in other people's directions. I was looking for a specific hire just a couple of weeks ago. I literally just typed in a couple code words in LinkedIn. I found 3 or 4 people. I reached out. Now, admittedly, it's a little bit easier for me. I do have the CEO in my title, etc. So as a 22-year-old, it might be a bit different, but just try. And then you might talk to 1 or 2 people, right? And then another thing is, I've actually been really impressed with people that just have looked me up online through either Stable Foods or through LinkedIn, and have just sent me resumes and CVs. We've ended up hiring some of these people. I'm like, okay, yeah. Like I always say, they say, hello, sir. Like, how are you? I'm interested in Stable Foods. And I always say, what can Stable Foods do for you? And usually the next thing is, I'd like a job. And then the next thing I say is, all right, what skills do you have? What do you want to do? Like I said, I might not be hiring, but I'm always looking for talent, right? And a couple of those people have ended up at Stable Foods, and now they have opportunities for real careers. And look, lots of times I say, look, you're a finance person. I'm not hiring for finance right now. I'm sorry. But like, check back again in 9 months. I know that's not what that person wanted to hear, but it's honest. And maybe in 9 months, I'm going to need that person back. And it takes some courage, I know, and like rejection letters are tough, and even worse than rejection letters, getting ignored is tough. And it's actually one of the reasons why I personally take it upon myself to reply to every single email that comes to the info account. But just especially here, I think one of the most important things is getting your foot in the door in a decent place. And if you can do that, then man, I mean, then you're in a great place, right? Then you work for 2 or 3 years, and then who knows what happens after that. So yeah, that was probably not the most insightful answer of all time. But
it was quite insightful.
Okay, all right. Then, well, you're being very kind, very, very gracious.
Yeah, like most Kenyans, we are kind. I'd like to think so.
Definitely, yeah. No, but I mean, look. But in all seriousness, right? If you're going to show me the initiative of looking for a company that aligns with your background and your values and your interests, that's 50% of what I want to see, right? I want to see someone who's smart, and I want to see someone who cares about what they do. If you can put those two together, like, you're going to be in a pretty good place.
Right. I'm sure also you want somebody who can align their vision to the vision of the company and see where they can, take the company as they.
That's right.
Yeah. Right. Fred has, I think we've lost him.
Sorry. Go ahead, Fred.
Fred has dropped for a while, but I think that will be all because he doesn't have any follow-up questions. It has been great and so insightful having you on the podcast, and you're quite funny, so I have really enjoyed the session talking to you and learning more about the agricultural space. And also, just because I have a bias, you're mainly doing this in the place where I grew up in, so yeah, I like to see work like that going on, helping the community and uplifting others. And on the note of hiring, guys, we at Spacia Tech have a great pool of software engineers. So when you want to maybe develop your company and take it to greater heights, and you need some software engineers on the team, I'm sure we at Spacia Tech will be more than helpful in giving you some people who are really passionate about the agri-tech space to help you build this product to greater heights.
No, that's really great to know. I didn't mention it, but there will be a digitization of what we do, and that will require some engineers. So that's great to know. And in fact, I will reach out to you offline about another sort of special hire that you might that your network might be able to help out with.
We will be more than glad to help you find the right hire for that position. I'm sure the engineers are listening to this will be more than happy to apply for these positions. It has been great having you on our podcast, Andrew. We appreciate the time and the insights that you've given us today. We're hoping to have another session maybe in the next 9-10 months, and we want to hear more about what you've done, if you've expanded. We like to support any organization, startups that are making an impact, a social impact on the community. It has been great having you on the podcast, and I will call it an end here. Thank you so much. And anybody who would like to follow Andrew, I'm sure he's on LinkedIn as Andrew Massaro. Yeah.
Yeah, LinkedIn or www.stable-foods.com.
Amen. Okay, you guys have heard that. He's on LinkedIn, and you can follow or check out the Stable Foods page at www.stablefoods-foods.com. Thank you.
You got it. Merlyn, my pleasure. Thank you so much. And Fred in absentia, thank you so much as well. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers. Okay.